Executive Director of Living Water Ministries. Before I talk a little bit about this reading from 1 Kings and what it has to do with our lives and camp and all of that, I like to always give an introduction into what Living Water Ministries is for those that might not know. Living Water Ministries, in essence, is the outdoor ministry organization of our two ELCA synods here in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. We do a lot more than just camp, but we are an expression of the ELCA here in the Lower Peninsula. We also share a partnership with an Episcopal diocese that I just spent time with at their Synod Assembly equivalent event just this weekend. So we are an ecumenical ministry too. We do things like camp and all the ways that you think about camp in your mind, you know, that classic camp thing. But we do some hotel-based ministries too. The Gathering, which is for high school kids and young adults, and then Charge, which is for junior high kids up at Traverse City at Great Wolf Lodge. We do day camp that sends kind of the camp staff out during the summer, and we do camp in local communities at congregations. So we do a lot more than just that kind of quintessential thought that comes to your mind when you think about summer camp and what it was like. We do that too, but even that's shifting a little bit. We offer programs now, not only for our congregations, but for children in foster care, for families that are homeless, for adults with developmental disabilities, for high school kids to be trained as leaders and learn about anti-racism initiatives. We do a multicultural youth leadership academy that McKenna from this church has been to, and it's a powerful program. And where's there's McKenna? And so we're going to sing a song later that happens in that camp. And just all sorts of very different things than what you would think about with your regular camp kind of idea. And so we're really trying to push forward in new areas. And we're trying to do that with a bold outreach approach. So since 2014, in the last 4 summers, our scholarship fund has awarded over $161,000 of scholarships for about 498 campers to come who otherwise would not have been able to attend. We've done that largely with the generosity of our donors, and it's been a powerful way for us to share the gospel as far and wide as we possibly can. I mean, that's what we're in this for. We want to tell people about Jesus, and so we want to tear down every barrier that there is to experiencing the work that we do, and we feel that the work we do is a gift to be shared. So that is the space we're in. We do that program for children in foster care. We do that program for families that are homeless in cooperation with Samaritas, who pays the bill for that program by their own fundraising efforts. And so together with Samaritas, Living Water Ministries and Samaritas together in the same 4-year period has awarded $245,000 in camp scholarships. So to about 751 kids. So just really bold outreach initiatives that are really making a difference in drawing people in and creating new communities of people to experience Christ in a very personal way. I myself was a camper in this system as a kid. I was a college-age person that worked at camp, and I came back to do it full-time about 13 years ago. And it's just been huge in my life personally, too. So I speak kind of with some experience from every kind of area that we work in. And so to get into this reading today and some stuff that I think is relevant to it, I want to talk first about something called generational theory. I've been immersed in this stuff this last year, and I find it really fascinating, and I find it extremely meaningful and relevant to the work of Living Water Ministries and to the greater church. There are a lot of elements that define each generation. These are generalities that I want to share with you that you might object to some, or you might not feel like it perfectly fits, but stereotypically, each of the generations has some things that are specific to it. So baby boomers, and I'm sure we have probably all these generations in this room, baby boomers generally seek truth, and they ask themselves the question, is it true? That's the question that drives them. And for whatever it is they discover is true, they'll go all in on that, but they're wondering what's true. Generation X, which is my generation, seeks authenticity and is driven by the question, is it real? So do words and actions match? Is it actually happening? Millennials seek impact, and they're really concerned with, does it make a difference in the world? And they want to see how that impact is happening. And Generation Z, which is our youngest generation, I have a 12-year-old son named Logan. He would be in Generation Z. They seek relevancy. And so the question that they really wrestle with is, why does this matter in my life? And so connecting that is important for them. And this newest generation, Generation Z, is the first that they're saying is truly post-Christian. Now, this would probably be an exception here as I'm preaching in a church, but that Generation Z really has no memory of the gospel. Nothing's hardwired in there about it. And so to help you fully grasp this, I want you to imagine the parable of the prodigal son. It's a story many of us know well. And so in this story, the son leaves his father, he squanders his wealth, he's starving, nobody will help him, and so he decides to go home. But imagine that when he's down in the mud with the pigs, he doesn't decide to go home, but instead decides to make a life for himself where he is. And so he finds a wife and gets married and has children, and now those children have never met the father in the story that we're familiar with. And then those children raise a family and have children, and now those children are now twice removed from the father in the original story. That's what it's like to be truly post-Christian. We're living in a society now where that generation is pretty much twice removed from knowing the Father, knowing God. And that's concerning, but beyond being unsettling, this post-Christian reality, there's some interesting other facts about Generation Z that I'd like to share. Their total population, the total population of Generation Z dwarfs the population of baby boomers. So there are way more of Generation Z people than there are any other people. They spend the most money online. It's probably not theirs, but they spend it. And you only have about 8 seconds to get their interest before they decide whether or not you're relevant to them. If they decide you're relevant, they'll go all in, but they will walk away quickly. But most significantly, and I think and most relevant to today's reading from 1 Kings, is that Generation Z has virtually unlimited access to information. We're all carrying supercomputers in our pockets, but they have no wisdom with which to filter it. And I think, while Generation Z struggles for the wisdom to filter all that information, I don't think they have the market cornered on lacking wisdom. I think most of us probably, most of the time, are in the same boat. Some of us might have more experience, but who of us can really claim to have a full grasp on God's wisdom? In this reading from 1 Kings, God basically writes Solomon a blank check. He says to Solomon, "Ask what I should give you." And of all the things that Solomon could ask for, he asks for wisdom. He doesn't ask for worldly things like riches or long life or that his enemies be overcome. He simply asks for wisdom. Specifically, he asks for an understanding mind. How often do we find ourselves with such clarity as we see in Solomon this morning? How often do we overcome our own wants, the distractions of our life, the stress of our school or jobs, the necessity of paying our bills, our hectic schedules, and simply ask God for wisdom? As a people immersed in a culture focused on acquiring wealth and power and success and stuff, it can be extremely difficult to have the presence of mind to ask for something as fundamental as wisdom. About 14 years ago, my dad had a heart attack, and I always say that was where he touched death. He lived, but in the moment, it was very scary for us. And he was in ICU, and he was, out of it. We didn't know if he'd wake back up. And I remember going to the chapel, kind of wandering off to the chapel in the hospital and praying. And I'm no stranger to prayer, although I certainly don't pray nearly enough as I would like. And this prayer was unique and memorable for me because I didn't ask for what I wanted. I asked simply for the wisdom to deal with whatever happened. And in that moment, I can remember palpably the sense of peace that came over me. And I think that speaks to the power of wisdom and when we ask for it. And so how often are we asking God for this kind of wisdom? This wisdom which has nothing to do with what we need or want, but has everything to do with a yearning deep within us to simply be faithful. A yearning to truly love God and a yearning to really, really love our neighbor. It reminds me of a story that I want to share with you that I think ties into this, about a camper that came to camp a couple of years ago, I think 3 summers ago now, named Diamond. And Diamond came from with a large contingent of campers from a church, an Episcopal church, in Inkster, Michigan. Inkster's kind of near Detroit, and it's a really forgotten place, truly. It's a really hard place to live. And so this large group of kids came from the church there in Inkster, and camp was a foreign place to Diamond. She'd never been in such a place before. She was a high school-age student, and she had a really interesting demeanor. So Diamond was a really hard kid to read. She was quiet, but very straight-faced, very stern-looking. She wouldn't say much, at least to me. If I asked her a question, the best I would get would be a head nod or a head shake, yes or no, but not a verbalization of that. And it was almost even a little intimidating, like I just didn't know what to do. She just had a very strong presence. And from the get-go, because this was such a foreign environment for her, she decided that she didn't really like the camp experience, that it wasn't for her. She didn't like the rules, she didn't like the structure, she didn't like being outdoors, and she didn't like being without her cell phone. She didn't like it, and at least in her cabin, she let everybody else know she didn't like it. She stirred up a lot of drama. And it's not an unusual experience for us that a camper from time to time struggles with being at camp. They resist the experience, and often it's really just a result of some homesickness. And we have strategies to deal with that. We try and get the child to the next day, just to the next event, try and get them looking forward to what's coming up, because typically within about 24 to 48 hours, they have a lot of fun. They make friends. They're doing things like swimming and archery and service projects and high ropes, and they just get involved and they stop thinking about home and they're fine. But not Diamond. She relentlessly resisted the experience. And on Wednesday, kind of in the middle of the week, the decision was made in collaboration with the adults that had brought kids from the Episcopal Church that Diamond and her friend Trinity, who had been roped in on all of this, needed to go home, just for the sake of the other campers' experiences, which is always a very hard decision to make. And so arrangements were made. A vehicle was on the way from Inkster. It was going to arrive pretty late in the evening to pick up Diamond and Trinity. And it was at that time when we kind of informed her that she'd be leaving that we learned that she not only expected to go home, but she had 3 sisters there, and she expected they were all going home. In fact, one of the few things she did say to me was, "We're all going home." And I thought, oh, okay, that's complicated because the car coming to get you only has 2 seats. So I didn't actually tell her that at that time, but I was like, okay, this is a new problem to solve. And so she was really vehement about this desire for her sisters to go home. And so we pulled Diamond's sisters into the camp office because we hadn't talked to them about any of this yet. And we had Diamond and Trinity in there too, and we were trying to sort this out. And we talked to Diamond's parents, who themselves didn't have any means to come get the kids. In fact, the one car that was coming was like the one car that they could find that a member of the congregation was willing to come and pick up kids with. They just didn't have the resources. And after some conversation, I brought Diamond and Trinity into my office while we gathered Diamond's sisters in another office so they could figure out what they wanted to do without the influence of their older sister. And it was at that time, while I had an audience with Diamond and Trinity, that I just talked to them about, well, what do you like about camp? What's bothering you about camp? And just wanted to learn about stuff. And it was at that time that I learned that they felt pretty forced to be there by their parents, which I remember feeling that way as a camper, kind of. I didn't want to come out of my summer routine and go to camp, but I loved camp when I was there. And they also were told that camp was only 3 days long, and so they were out of clean clothes. And I think that was probably some of their stress. And so that conversation got interrupted because the sisters were now ready to kind of render their verdict on what they wanted to do. 2 of them said, yeah, we want to go home too, and the third one was like, I just want to go back to my cabin and hang out with my new friends. And so she was annoyed to have to be talking about any of this. So we sent her back to the cabin, and we talked to Diamond, Trinity, and the 2 sisters, told them that a car was coming, that Diamond and Trinity would be the first 2 to go home, and that the next day another car would have to come to pick up the 2 sisters because there just weren't enough seats. And Diamond did not like this. She went silent, and she looked really mad. And there was this long, awkward pause. And after that awkwardness, I kind of pierced that silence and asked Diamond if she felt like her sisters would be unsafe if she left them at camp. And she said, which is the way she communicated mostly. So I thought, at least she doesn't feel like they're unsafe. And then there was kind of another pause. And Diamond looked at her sisters, who were sitting off to her side, and she said, "You want to go home?" And they said they did. And she said, "Then go pack your bags." So Diamond, this camper who had been a huge stinker all week, not wanting to be at camp, wanting to get out of there, demanding to go home, gave up her opportunity to do so that her sisters could go first. And in this, as nuanced as it is, in this I saw Christ. I saw the love of a big sister setting aside her own desires to provide for them, and it humbled me a great deal to witness it. It was a powerful moment for me, as nuanced as it was. So we arranged for Diamond and Trinity's dirty laundry to get washed as they went back into camp, and there were some other campers that had that same impression, so we washed everybody's clothes. And Diamond went back to her cabin after promising that she would stop raising a stink about being at camp, and that was a promise that she kept. And so the next day, before another vehicle had been deployed to come get Diamond and Trinity, Diamond had decided that she would like to see the week through. I think she decided that. I mean, I'd like to think it's because she just loved camp so much, but I think it was because she still had a sister there, and she was a really protective older sister. And she just wanted to make sure that sister got through the week well. And so Diamond and Trinity decided to stay at camp. And so I ended up kind of accompanying that group on some of their program options the rest of the week. And at the end of the week, I had witnessed Diamond engage in a service project at a nursing home, and I watched her interact with residents there, and it was powerful. It was just really personable, and there were smiles, and it was a really positive experience. And she was enjoying various activities and experiences. I would ask her, "Did you like the beach? Did you like going to Lake Michigan today?" And she'd go, and I'd be like, "Well, what didn't you like about it?" And she'd say, "Well, we had to come back." And I was like, "Okay, so you did like it." Or, "Did you like high ropes?" You know, that's all I would get. And so, and I took those head nods as pretty high praise, too. I thought, okay, well, Diamond gave me a head nod. That must mean it's really good. So as Diamond was waiting for the bus to come pick up the kids on the last day, as their camp is now over and we're just waiting for the bus to pick up the kids, she was sitting at a picnic table. And I just felt really compelled to go up to Diamond and share something with her. And so I sat down next to Diamond on the picnic table, and I said, "Diamond, can I tell you something?" And she said, and so I said, when we hire our summer staff, we ask them a lot of questions, and we ask them to tell us a lot of different things. And one of the things we ask them to share with us is about a time when they put the needs of someone else ahead of their own. And when you let your sisters go home first, that was an excellent example of that for me. And I just wanted you to know that I saw that, and I really appreciate that. And Diamond gave me a response. This is all she did. I'm going to try and recreate it. It's very, very nuanced, but this is all she did. She went, That was it. And I'm like, inside, like, touchdown. Like, I got through to this kid. This is a moment. It was the highlight of my summer. I've preached about it many times. And it was powerful. And so, as we experience in today's reading from 1 Kings, I believe that this wisdom leads to truth. And wisdom reveals love. King Solomon has the hard task of determining which woman is the real mother of this baby. And he uses the wisdom he's been granted by God to get to the truth. And that truth is revealed by the love of the baby's real mother. In this story about Diamond's camp experience, wisdom also leads to truth, and wisdom also reveals love. The truth of Diamond's story is that she wasn't a problem kid. She was the embodiment of Jesus Christ. And that truth was revealed to me by the love of a big sister. Solomon forsook asking for riches or long life or the defeat of his enemies, and he simply asked for wisdom. And God was so impressed with the faithfulness of that request that he granted it. And in addition, promised Solomon riches, honor, and long life in return for continued faithfulness. And God offers the same thing to us. we are offered unmatched riches in God's love and mercy, and we are offered eternal life through Christ's death on the cross. And so if we are already granted real wealth and real power, not worldly wealth and not worldly power, mind you, and if we are granted not long life but eternal life, what else is there for us to ask for other than wisdom? Brothers and sisters, we need to pray for God's wisdom to deal with the crazy things that are happening in the world around us all the time. Like these two women in the story this morning, people are living in prostitution in order to survive the oppression of their daily lives. We need to pray for wisdom. There are over 765 million people in this world, 10% of the population, that live in extreme poverty. We need to pray for wisdom on how to deal with that. There are 65 million refugees in the world that are struggling every day with lots of uncertainty and instability and fear and danger. We need to pray for wisdom about how to deal with that. People are getting killed in their places of worship. We need to pray for wisdom how to deal with that. Our children, Generation Z, they're growing up with no memory of the gospel. We need to pray for wisdom about that too. And that wisdom is at the core of what we're trying to do at Living Water Ministries, seek that wisdom. And that wisdom that we are praying for comes to us by no other means than living lives of faith in the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. Amen.